Let's take a look at Week 3 NFL injuries for both the fantasy football player and for the sports investor. San Diego Chargers and Tennessee Titans. And folks, I'm Joe Duffy, CEO of OffshoreInsiders.com. America's #1 sports betting service is Joe Duffy's Picks. Now, San Diego at Tennessee. Tennessee is a 3-point home favorite. The total is 43.5. Chargers are 1-1 straight up. Both of those games were decided by 3 points. Phillip Rivers putting up big numbers under new head coach Mike McCoy. However, they won the game in Week 2 despite 2 red zone turnovers. So this is an offense with a big upside. They made some mistakes in Week 1. This is, though, the home opener for Tennessee, and one loss was in overtime to Houston. Of course, they beat the Pittsburgh Steelers, which was a Joe Duffy's Picks wise guy. So both of these teams arguably could be 2-0. Cleveland at Minnesota. Minnesota laying 4.5. The total is 41. Minnesota's 0-2 straight up, but this is their home opener. Remember, we told you that Adrian Peterson, we gave you specific reasons in some previous videos why Adrian Peterson's production will probably be down, especially with his fullback suspended. Now for Cleveland, is it time to call Trent Richardson a bust? He's only averaging 3.4 yards per carry. Remember, he's a physical running back. He dishes out punishment, but he takes punishment while he's doing it. Now the Browns, Will Wheaton, is he going to play? He was hurt. Look, the Browns went with Wheaton. That was a smart idea because he's got more of an upside than Jason Campbell. Jason Campbell is your typical solid veteran quarterback, but he doesn't have much of an upside. But the bottom line is, if Jason Campbell starts this week, he is right now still the better quarterback, doesn't have the long-term upside. But that would actually be good news for Cleveland bettors if Jason Campbell's a starting quarterback, and he could. Of course, the Minnesota Vikings with Christian Ponder, very shaky quarterback situation. So, in reality, if Jason Campbell does wind up starting for Cleveland, that should give them a short-term boost. Tampa Bay at New England. Tom Brady, after 2 weeks, we all know one tight end in jail, another one is injured. 2 years ago, through the first 2 weeks, he threw 31 passes in the direction of tight ends. 1 year ago, 23. This year, just 2. Now, Brady, to his credit, he's not putting the onus on his new group of wide receivers. He said the problem isn't the group of wide receivers he has, it's just execution. I got news for you, that's wrong. Tom Brady, the fewest weapons he's had in many years. Not that Brady's ever really had tremendous weapons except when he had Randy Moss and he put up ridiculous numbers. But this is the worst group of weapons that he's ever had. Tampa Bay, their defense has actually been pretty strong. They've allowed 6 yards per pass. The team's normally getting 6.7. Only problem is Tampa Bay, terrible quarterback. Now there's some problems in paradise with Freeman fighting with the coaching staff there. Look, I got news for you. Freeman was not a very good quarterback under the previous regime. Just not a good quarterback situation there in Tampa Bay. Could be a low-scoring game here. Don't expect too much production out of either quarterback, but Tom Brady, the fact that he is Tom Brady, keeps the number pretty high. Houston at Baltimore. Houston's actually a 1-point favorite at the Super Bowl champions, total 44. Now, we're going to keep a close injury eye on Andre Johnson. He did leave the game in Game 2. Will he be available for Game 3 before us making a bet on this? We'll definitely take a look at the injury report there. But DeAndre Hopkins has emerged. The rookie wide receiver for Houston's been tremendous. 6 receptions, including the overtime winner. 12 receptions in 2 games. Ravens clearly missing Dennis Pitta and Bolden. Pitta's out with an injury. Bolden, of course, is in Arizona. Ray Rice is questionable. Another guy, we got to take a look at the injury report there. Joe Flacco, only 2 for 13 in the first 2 games with throws of 20 yards or more. Jacoby Jones, Baltimore wide receiver. He's missed the last 6 quarters. We're also going to be checking the injury report for his status as well. St. Louis Rams at the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas laying 4 with a total of 46.5. Dallas, since moving into the Jerry Dome, have not really had much of a home field advantage. So that's something to consider here, especially since they're laying more of a field goal. Rams, their first 2 games followed a similar formula. 2 slow starts, 2 strong finishes. For those of you who like to bet those First and second half lines, keep that in mind. Arizona at the New Orleans Saints. New Orleans laying 9.5 with a total 48.5. Carson Palmer, for years we said he was overrated. Now he may be underrated, getting a ton of points here. As we said, most importantly, huge upgrade from what Arizona had last year. Odds makers have finally settled down, realizing that Carson Palmer is an average quarterback. But he is one guy I think has gone from underrated to overrated. Arizona's wide receivers are being used this year. Saints were not completely sold on. They could easily be 0-2. Went down to the final play against Atlanta in week 1. Maybe we got a little lucky there. All the emotion was going their way, and they could have lost to a pretty bad Tampa Bay team. Detroit and Washington. Washington is a 1-point favorite with a total of 48.5. Reggie Bush, we know it had a spectacular week 1. He's injury prone. Got to take a look at his injury situation. Redskins have been terrible. We told you before the year start. We want to see these both rookie and the first-year young quarterbacks. Want to see them do it 2 years straight. RG3 has not lived up to the challenge this year, of course, coming back from that ACL. They've allowed 283 yards after the catch. Washington to Green Bay. That is the most any team has given up since 2008. So Washington, weak on both sides of the ball. They're not tackling. Green Bay at Cincinnati. Cincinnati, a 1-point favorite. Bengals will be coming off of the Monday Night Football game. Green Bay, key addition this year, drafting Eddie Lacy, but now he is hurt. He is a rookie, but he is their best running back. New York Giants at Carolina. Carolina laying 1, total 45.5. Panthers, 2 losses were by 6 points. They're 2-14 under Rivera, straight up in games decided by 6 or less. Now, on one hand, that would say, look, they've got an upside. They've lost a bunch of close games. And if they could just start evening it out, maybe they're much better than their record says. But the truth is, in a game where the odds makers flat out say is going to go down to the wire, that an important statistic, and we would say that would be more reason to say to fade them. But if they lose this game and then they're a big underdog, that statistic would say maybe go with them. Panthers, though, could be -3 defensive back starters. We're going to be taking a close look at the injury report there. Giants, no running game, though, just 2.2 yards per rush and 36 yards they've averaged in the first 2 games. Atlanta, Miami. Miami, a 1-point favorite. Miami, 2-0, both by 13 or more. Are they for real? This is a home opener. Should be plenty of energy for Miami. Steven Jackson, Asante Samuel, among a bunch of Falcons that were injured in Game 2. And defensive end and outside linebacker Troy Bierman and fullback Brady Ewing are going to be out for the season for Atlanta. So they're being hit by the injury bug. We got to keep a close eye on Asante Samuel, Steven Jackson, close eye on the Falcons injury report. Miami taking their 3rd straight Thursday off. You know, we like to say 90% of the game is half mental. They're 2-0, took Thursday off. The coaching staff says it believes it's helped them finish strong. Does it? As you know, we say, since they believe that it's going to help them finish strong, it is going to. Colts at the 49ers. 49ers laying 10.5. Has Andrew's Luck runneth out? Again, gets back to my theory. Andrew Luck, everything went right for him his rookie year. Even a guy who came in with as much hype as Andrew Luck, there's a little bit of a honeymoon period, but now he is the hunter rather than the hunted. Hasn't looked out all that well. Indianapolis 9-1 last year in games decided by 7 points or less. So that tells us they had good fortune. But the 49ers, Colin Kaepernick, another guy, he wasn't a rookie, but remember, he started in the middle of the year last year. Kaepernick still doesn't have a long track record coming off a bad game against Seattle. Don't get me wrong, I'll take him on his team. But from a betting standpoint, not talking about from a standpoint of a fan, and yeah, I would also say from a fantasy standpoint, both of these quarterbacks may be a little bit overrated. Fairly high total, good San Francisco defense. Initial leaning towards the under. Seattle hosting Jacksonville. Seattle, a 19-point favorite, total 41. Again, we want to tell you that one of those myths when you have a high number and a low total, people would always say, you're going to hear people say this week, well, if you like Jacksonville, you got to like the under. If you like Seattle, you got to like the over. That's not true. We've debunked that. There's videos out there on our YouTube channel. You can subscribe to us via YouTube or iTunes, etc. That is false. Don't fall into that trap. Seattle's offensive line has been so-so. Talk about a perfect sandwich game, though. Seattle coming off of a big, impressive Sunday night win against San Francisco. Their next 2 games at Houston, at Indianapolis. And again, Russell Wilson has been good. He hasn't been spectacular. This is laying a ton of points in a clear-cut sandwich situation. Buffalo and the New York Jets. The Jets are actually 1-point home favorites, total 39. E.J. Manuel clearly ahead of Geno Smith as far as the rookie quarterbacks are concerned. And as we've said, in recent years, rookie quarterbacks have led the most surprising teams. E.J. Manuel, an early candidate for that. Geno Smith does not look like a candidate for that. The Bears and the Steelers. The Steelers, a rare 2-point home underdog. Chicago 2-0 straight up. But this is going to be the first road game. They won those games by a combined 4 points. Now, Jay Cutler has looked much more composed in this Mark Trestman system. Will that last? Not going to be going up against a tremendous defense, going against an aging defense and an aging defense in a short week. In the Monday night game, Oakland at Denver. Denver, 14, total 49. Broncos games have averaged 70 points per game. Oakland safety, Tyvon Branch is doubtful. That is a huge injury. Don't underestimate how big that could be. Again, we will check the injury report much more closely, get something more definitive before we make an official bet. But Terrell Pryor, another young quarterback. He's not a rookie, more analogous to Colin Kaepernick, a veteran quarterback, but first year as a starter. We could have another surprise team in the Bay Area. I'm not saying Pryor is going to be quite as good as Kaepernick, but Oakland, a potential dark horse team from a betting standpoint. But at this point, with Peyton Manning, can they make the line high enough? You want all the winners. Visit us at offshoreinsiders.com, www.offshoreinsiders.com for all the winning picks.